Discover the incredible connection that transformed a billionaire's deaf daughter's life forever. Emily lived in a world muted by silence, a canvas painted with the vibrant colors of hope and laughter that she couldn't hear but could feel in her heart. She was a spirited 22-year-old deaf woman in Greenville, where community pride was the backdrop of every day. Though raised in a humble home, she wore resilience like a badge of honor, overcoming each obstacle with an infectious smile. As she volunteered at the local food bank on a sun-drenched summer afternoon, her fingers danced with enthusiasm, sharing warmth with those who approached her. And then she saw him, Tom, a reclusive billionaire cloaked in the shadows of his wealth, trying to escape from a life that smothered him in expectations. His daughter, Samantha, stood off to the side, lost and shy, much like Emily once felt at school events, where conversations and giggles whisked past her like faraway whispers. At that moment, with a shared understanding, Emily decided to bridge the silent gap with her kindness. They exchanged knowing glances, a connection that surpassed the need for words. It sparked something beautiful. As days turned to weeks, Emily's authenticity illuminated Tom's guarded heart. His longing to connect with Samantha ignited each time he watched Emily sweep Samantha into her vibrant world. "Are you ready to explore?" Emily signed animatedly, urging Samantha to step beyond her protective bubble. The warmth of this newfound friendship began to dissolve Tom's apprehension. However, at home, a storm brewed. His wife, Helen, viewed Emily as a threat, her eyes reflecting a fear of exposing Samantha to the raw heat of reality outside their cultural cocoon where wealth erected walls of separation. "Emily is not the right influence for Samantha," Helen insisted over a tense dinner, her voice trembling with indignation. Heart pounding, Tom wrestled with the tension in the air. The friction made him realize, was he choosing comfort over real connection? The discussion hung in the air like a heavy fog, shifting his perspective on wealth and parenting. It was at a community gathering, buzzing with excitement and laughter, that Samantha took the stage, her heart pounding in sync with the crowd's anticipation. Yet, with Emily's steadfast encouragement, she began to share her story. Courage poured from Samantha like sunlight breaking through clouds, leaving the audience awestruck. But just as the atmosphere was electric, disaster struck. A tragic accident shattered the moment, spiraling Tom and Helen into a reckoning. Lost amidst the chaos, Emily felt the sting of isolation creep back in, threatening to uproot the bond she had nurtured with Samantha. What if she lost her? Tom grappled with fear and love, torn between his family's security and the vulnerability Emily brought into his life. For Emily, hope ignited, but she couldn't shake the shadow of abandonment. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As fear and loss loomed, the fabric of their intertwined fates hung by a thread, each tug pulling them closer or pushing them apart. Would Emily's resilience challenge the boundaries of privilege? And would Tom find the courage to let love bridge the chasm his wealth had created? In that moment of turmoil, the strength of connection trembled on the edge. Could it truly transcend all divides? Emily stood at the edge of the crowd, her heart racing with uncertainty. The accident had sent shockwaves through the community, leaving everyone in a state of disbelief. She couldn't shake the feeling that fate had dealt her a cruel hand. Samantha had just started to find her voice, breaking free from her shell. Now, that spark felt dimmed, overshadowed by the catastrophe that had unfolded. The sound of sirens still echoed in her ears as she replayed the scene in her mind. What could she have done differently? But guilt settled heavily in her heart. She had dared to hope, only to watch that hope slip through her fingers like sand. In the days that followed, the atmosphere at the food bank shifted. Conversations that once buzzed with energy now felt stifled, weighed down by the tragedy. Emily's fingers danced less when she signed, her confidence waning as she wrestled with the fear that she'd lost Samantha for good. She sought solace in the familiar faces of her community, hoping for a sign that the light could return. Meanwhile, Tom was wrestling with his own demons. Helen had retreated further into her fortress of worry, distrust swirling like smoke between them. Tom's heart ached as he observed his family crumble under the weight of their circumstances. Guilt clung to him, not just for the accident but for the choices he had made that had pushed away the warmth and authenticity he'd found with Emily and Samantha. One evening, he found himself alone in his study, surrounded by books that had once stirred his ambition but now seemed hollow. He reached for his phone, hesitating as he considered reaching out to Emily. Would she even want to hear from him? Would he be another reminder of lost dreams? With a deep breath, he dialed her number, nerves thrumming in his chest. Emily. His voice felt foreign, a whisper in the quiet of the night. Tom. She replied, her tone cautious, almost fragile. I know things have been difficult, he began. But I want to talk. I think we both need to. I just don't know if I can face you. Not now, she interrupted, frustration lacing her words. Please, give me a chance. There was desperation in his plea, a yearning to bridge the chasm that had formed. Silence stretched between them, thick and heavy like fog, before she finally sighed. What do you want to say? Can we meet? Just for a moment. I can't lose the connection we have. Emily hesitated, torn. She longed to reconnect but feared the weight of their situation would smother the light that flickered between them. Yet, something in Tom's voice held a sincerity that stirred hope, even amidst the uncertainty. All right, let us meet tomorrow. But I can't promise anything, she conceded. As their conversation ended, Tom felt a flicker of hope within him. Perhaps, just perhaps, they could find a way through the darkness together. The sun rose the next day with a renewed promise. As Emily made her way to the cafe, she took a deep breath, determined not to let fear dictate her choices any longer. The vibrant colors of the world around her filled her with warmth as she thought of Samantha, who needed them both more than ever. But when she arrived, she found not just Tom waiting but a shadow looming over the doorway. The figure was familiar but unexpected. Hushed whispers consumed the air as she laid eyes on Helen, stepping forward as if to reclaim her daughter's story. Emily, Helen's voice cut through the tension, her demeanor sharp. We need to talk about Samantha. The sound of her name felt like a spell binding them all, and Emily's heart raced with a mix of fear and determination. They were on the brink of something transformative, but would they have the courage to confront the truth? The air was thick with unspoken words and raw emotions. Helen's eyes glistened with worry as she locked onto Emily's, searching for understanding, maybe even for a hint of forgiveness. Emily's heart pounded in her chest as she struggled to find her voice amid the uncertainty surrounding them. She had expected a talk with Tom, not a showdown with Helen. Helen, she began, but Helen cut her off, her urgency bubbling to the surface. Emily, please. I need to know what's happening with Samantha. I can't lose her like this. I just can't. The depth of Helen's fear struck Emily right through her, and she found herself nodding instinctively. The same fear lived in her belly. We all need to be there for her, Emily said softly, feeling the heaviness of the moment. Tom watched from a distance, his heart aching to step in but unsure how. So much had passed hurt, misunderstandings, and things left unsaid. They were all suffering, but their pain felt like a dividing wall. Can we find a way to support her together? Emily suggested, hoping it would serve as a bridge. Helen's shoulders relaxed slightly, but her expression remained conflicted. What do you mean together? The accident, it's changed everything. It's like we can't be in the same room without feeling the weight of it. I know, Emily replied, her voice steady but layered with emotion. But if we keep letting it drive us apart, we'll lose her. She needs us. Tom finally stepped forward, their gazes meeting across the cafe's wooden table. We're all grappling with this tragedy in our own ways, he said quietly. I made mistakes, both of you know that. But we can't keep hiding from each other. Greedily, Emily caught a glimmer of hope in the cohesion of their shared pain. Perhaps this was the moment they needed to confront the truth and spark the healing that sheltered beneath their grief. Let us put aside everything that has happened just for her, Tom continued. For Samantha. Helen looked at Tom, her brows knitting in uncertainty, but there was a flicker of recognition. They were all linked by the love and care they had for Samantha. Stepping into the chaos together might just unravel the pain they had carried for too long. Emily took a deep breath and nodded, her resolve solidifying. Let us meet with Samantha. Talk through it all. Make sure she knows she is not alone. A rush of understanding echoed around them as relief washed over the tension. Even in the aftermath of grief, they all felt a subtle shift, a sense of unity. Helen and Tom both seemed to relax just a bit, hope partly restored. But as the path ahead emerged, Emily noticed that Helen's eyes were distant, clouded with unvoiced concerns. It was then that Emily understood, moving forward wouldn't come without facing the truth, the raw, painful reality of the accident that had altered their lives forever. Are we all on the same page? Emily asked, searching their faces for agreement. Before anyone could respond, the cafe door swung open, and a familiar voice called out. Mom. Emily. Is everything okay? It was Samantha. The very mention of her name sent adrenaline coursing through Emily's veins. Speak of the angel, Tom murmured under his breath, but Emily felt a sense of dread flooding back in. Could they really be ready to face her? Would the truth they now held be too heavy for her to bear? As Samantha stepped closer, unsure yet hopeful, Emily swallowed hard, feeling the gravity of their shared burden loom larger than ever. Would they shatter under the weight of the truth? Or could this moment signify a turning point in their family's healing journey? In that pivotal moment, everything hung in the balance. The next word spoken could either break them or finally begin to mend the pieces they all carried. Would they dare to speak the truth? Samantha stood at the cafe entrance, her bright eyes scanning the faces of her mother and Emily. She sensed the tension before she could grasp its source. The air hummed with unspoken words, and a knot twisted in her stomach. Is everything okay? She repeated, a hint of apprehension threading through her voice. Helen forced a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. Yes, sweetheart, we were just discussing some things. It was meant to assure, but as the words hung there, it felt fragile, like a house of cards teetering on the edge. Things. Samantha's brow furrowed, and Emily felt a pang of guilt cross her heart. How could they share the burden of their struggle with someone already under such pressure? Just adult stuff, Emily interjected quickly, wishing she could pull the words back as they landed. They felt awkward, too general, but she was unsure how else to steer the conversation. Tom shifted in his seat, the guilt of past decisions weighing heavily on him. Samantha, we were talking about the support you might need, especially with everything that has happened. At that, Samantha's face paled. Support? She echoed, her voice barely a whisper. Are you saying you think I need help? Helen's gaze softened. No, honey, we just want to make sure you're okay. We care, do you? Samantha cut her off, her eyes blazing with frustration. It feels like everyone's been in their own little world since the accident. I've been lost. You know that. Her voice shook slightly, a mix of anger and hurt as if she had been holding onto it for far too long. Emily felt the walls around her crumble as Samantha's raw emotions spilled like paint from a tipped can. She could see how deeply the accident had marked Samantha, it radiated from her like a shadow, dark and heavy. Look, Sam, Emily started, her hands reaching out, we all care. So much. And we know things have been hard. But we're here now, and we want to help you navigate this. Her words trailed off. Navigate what? Samantha scoffed. The aftermath? The mess. All I've wanted is for things to go back to normal, and instead, I get to watch you all tiptoe around the truth. There it was, the jagged edge of truth cutting deep. Emily gulped in attention. They had avoided the real conversation, the heart of the matter, but Samantha was right. They had all been hiding beneath layers of polite conversation. "Sam, we need to talk about the accident," Tom said, his voice trembling slightly. "We can't just keep pretending that everything is fine." Samantha's eyes widened, the realization hitting her like a wave crashing on the beach. "You all blame yourselves, don't you?" "Blame is the wrong word," Helen said softly. "It's guilt. We're all feeling it." A silence descended, thick and heavy, as they all felt the weight of what they'd avoided for so long. Emily could see the truth in Samantha's gaze. Beneath the anger was a young woman desperate for honesty. "Tell me," Samantha said, her voice steadying, revealing a flicker of resolve in her determination. "Tell me everything." The words hung in the air, electrifying and dangerous, each of them knowing that this was the moment that could either tear them apart or draw them closer together. Emily glanced at Helen and Tom, their faces a mix of worry and hope. They couldn't back down now, they owed it to Samantha. "All right," Emily finally said, sensing the room holding its breath. "But promise me we'll handle it together." And just as hope began to crack the surface of their heavy hearts, a loud crash came from just outside the cafe, an echo of chaos that jolted everyone back to reality and knocked the air from the moment. "What was that?" Samantha gasped, her expression shifting once more as a hint of dread replaced her desire for honesty. As they all turned toward the door, the world seemed to loom larger than any of them had faced before. A new challenge was coming their way, and they all felt it, the fear mingling with the pull of hope. Would they find their footing together, or would this unforeseen event push them beyond their limits? The crash outside was unsettling, like a drumbeat announcing chaos. Samantha's heart raced as instinct kicked in. She moved closer to the entrance, her earlier anger shrinking in the face of uncertainty. Tom and Helen exchanged worried glances, the tension morphing into a shared concern that tightened the air around them. "What if it's something serious?" Tom whispered, half to himself. "Let's just check," Emily replied, her voice steady but her hands trembling slightly. It was a risk, stepping into the unknown, but they couldn't ignore the sound lingering in their minds. As they cautiously approached the door, a flurry of activity burst into view. People milled about on the street, pointing and murmuring. A small commotion had unfolded. It looked like a car had jumped the curb and crashed into a street vendor's cart, spilling over fruit and debris, a vivid chaos of color against the gray pavement. A collective gasp escaped from the cafe patrons. It was as if the world outside had shattered their moment of honesty. But for Samantha, it felt different. The moment she stepped out into the light, the lingering heaviness of the previous conversation fell away, replaced by a surge of adrenaline. "Is anyone hurt?" A voice called out, a mix of urgency and fear. Samantha's eyes darted through the crowd, searching for answers. She felt her heart pounding, but the sight of a child kneeling on the grass, crying terrified her more than the wreckage. Without thinking, she dashed toward the scene. "Are you okay?" she asked, kneeling beside the kid, who looked no older than 8. The child shook his head, tears streaming down his face. "My mom," the words fell heavy between them, and the world around them faded. She could see the faint outline of a woman lying motionless beside the car, panic flashing in the kid's eyes. Samantha reached out, touching his shoulder gently. "I'm here," she whispered. "Let us get help." In that moment, everything shifted for Samantha. Beneath her own turmoil, she felt an unwavering need to take control, to step beyond her own grief and fear. She shouted for help, her voice carrying above the noise. Tom and Emily arrived beside her, picking up on the urgency. Tom's demeanor shifted from worried father to someone ready for action. "Go get help," he instructed Emily, who nodded and sprinted toward a nearby crowd, calling for someone to dial 911. With adrenaline filling the air, Tom approached the still figure on the ground, his heart racing. "Stay with me," he shouted, his voice tinged with panic. Samantha moved next to him, compelled by a force she couldn't name. Helen, now at Samantha's side, seemed to fade into the background, watching as her daughter forged ahead into a world that needed her. The child squeezed Samantha's hand, signaling for her attention. "You're strong," he said, his voice small and shaky. "You can help her." Those simple words washed over Samantha like a bomb, igniting a spark deep inside. "Let us be strong together," she replied, her voice steady, the previous weight of their conversation now a mere shadow. Together with Tom, they worked to stabilize the woman until help arrived, the urgency binding them as they focused on what mattered. As they waited, the street filled with sirens and flashing lights, and Samantha stole a glance at her mother, who could only watch in awe. In that moment, it became clear, perhaps it was time for Samantha to take charge of her own narrative. But just as she felt a sense of clarity wrap around her, a flicker of doubt wormed its way back, whispering questions of what lay ahead. Would this newfound strength last when the chaos faded? And as she braced herself for the uncertainty that awaited, she had no way of knowing how deeply this moment would alter the course of their lives and what decisions they would need to confront once the dust settled. Samantha's heart raced as the sirens wailed closer. They seemed to rip through the air like a knife, slicing the tension that had settled in the crowd. She still knelt beside the child, who looked to her with wide, innocent eyes. In that moment, everything else faded away. Nothing mattered more than keeping him calm, keeping him safe. The child's mother lay still on the ground, and Samantha could hardly breathe. She glanced over at Tom, whose hands worked quickly, checking the woman's pulse, trying to assess the situation. Every second felt like an eternity as they waited for help that seemed to take forever to arrive. "Why isn't anyone here yet?" Tom muttered, frustration lacing his voice. "We need the paramedics." Samantha felt the weight of uncertainty settle heavily on her shoulders. She squeezed the boy's hand tighter. "They're on the way. You need to be brave, okay?" He nodded, tears still streaming down his cheeks. In that chaos, Samantha surprised herself. She felt a deep-rooted compassion bubbling to the surface, a force ready to propel her into action. She turned her focus back to the woman on the ground. What if she didn't wake up? The thought sent a chill down her spine, an emotion she didn't want to grapple with. "Stay with us," Samantha said softly, leaning closer to the woman, her voice steady despite the circumstances. "You're going to be okay. Help is coming." Each word felt heavier, a fragile thread connecting them, pulling them together through the storm of confusion. It was as if the woman could hear her, somehow trying to reach out from her stillness to respond. Helen stepped forward, a mother's instinct kicking in as she knelt beside Samantha and the child. "What can I do?" "Just be here," Samantha said, grateful for her mother's presence, feeling her love radiate like warmth. Suddenly, a roar of engines echoed through the street as emergency vehicles finally pulled up, red and blue lights flashing brightly against the dull gray backdrop. Relief washed over Samantha like a rainstorm bursting after a long drought. She took a deep breath, her body instinctively relaxing as the paramedics rushed toward them. "Step back, please." One of them called out, immediately shifting the atmosphere from chaos to controlled urgency. Samantha slowly released the boy's hand, her heart heavy but hopeful. As the paramedics began their work, she and Tom stepped aside, watching helplessly as trained professionals took over. "What do we do now?" Tom asked, looking at her, eyes still wide with worry. "We wait," Samantha replied, the words punctuated by a sudden wave of exhaustion. In that moment, she felt vulnerable. Even after showing strength, doubts crept back in. Was it enough to just help in these kinds of moments? What would she do if something like this happened again? Emily returned, breathless and wide-eyed, her phone clutched tightly in her hand. She must have seen the fear on Samantha's face. "I called 911, but I should have been faster." "No, you did great," Samantha assured her, swallowing hard. "You helped the best way you could." As they all stood there, still processing the whirlwind of emotions, the boy sniffled beside Samantha and looked up, seeking comfort. "Will she be okay?" Samantha hesitated, her mouth opening to reassure him. Hoping for the best, she glanced toward the paramedics, her heart filled with uncertainty. How could she promise anything when they were still fighting for the woman's life? "Let us just hope together," she finally said, kneeling once again to meet his gaze. The child nodded, and in that shared moment of worry, a bond formed, a flicker of hope that tied them together as they faced the unknown. What would happen next? Would their lives forever intertwine after this single moment of tragedy? Samantha felt a shift, the kind that hinted at impossible connections yet to blossom. And just then, as the sirens began to fade, an unsettling breeze stirred the air, leaving behind a question that loomed in Samantha's mind: would she find the answers she needed to reclaim not just her own direction, but also to understand how deeply these events would affect them all moving forward? Samantha stood there, rooted in uncertainty, as the paramedics worked diligently to revive the woman. The air was electric, charged with emotions that swirled around her like a tempest. She glanced at Tom, who looked just as distraught, his brow furrowed in worry. "Should we call her family?" he asked, voice trembling. Samantha shook her head. "Let them handle this when it's time," she replied softly. "Right now, we need to be here." She scanned the growing crowd, people murmuring, their faces painted with concern, some busy using their phones to capture the chaos, while others looked away, unable to bear the sight. Samantha felt a tug at her heart. It wasn't just the urgency of the situation that weighed her down. The boy beside her, clutching onto her hand, was losing hope with every passing moment. "What if she doesn't wake up?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. His words sliced through her. Samantha dropped to one knee so she was at his level. "We have to believe, okay?" she said, searching for strength in her own voice. "Believe that she can hear us even if she is not conscious." "Do you promise?" he asked, looking deep into her eyes, as if searching for the truth. "I promise," she replied sincerely, the weight of the promise settling on her shoulders like a heavy cloak. Across the street, she caught sight of a familiar face amidst the onlookers. It was Grace, her closest friend, making her way through the crowd. Grace's expression shifted from shock to concern as she rushed over. "What happened?" she panted, scanning the scene, taking in the ambulance, the paramedics, and the child's tear-streaked face. "An accident," Tom explained, his hands still clenched. "We think she is not waking up." Grace knelt beside Samantha, her presence a calming balm. "You did all you could. You're not alone," she said gently, reaching out to stroke the boy's back. "She will feel your strength." Samantha opened her mouth to respond but stopped herself, the air thick with unspoken fears. Then, the paramedic stepped back suddenly, his face taut with concentration. "We have a pulse," he called out, and like a magic spell cast over the crowd, a collective breath was released. The boy's eyes widened, and a glimmer of hope sparked in his gaze. "See?" Samantha told him, squeezing his hand gently. "She is fighting." The boy nodded, a small smile creeping across his face as he wiped away his tears. But as they continued watching, Samantha felt the weight of everything crashing back in. Would it ever feel normal again? Would they return to their regular routine after this? It nagged at her, a relentless whisper in the back of her mind, echoing the uncertainty of the earlier moments. Would she ever forget the panic, the fear of loss? After what felt like an eternity, the paramedics began to wheel the woman into the ambulance. "Is she going to be okay?" the boy cried out, desperation filling his voice. "Samantha!" Tom shouted suddenly. What if it's too late?" Her heart sank again at the thought. Before she could respond, the boy's innocent eyes met hers. It felt like the world had paused. "Will she live for me?" Samantha's throat tightened. "Let us send her our love," she offered, tears pooling in her eyes. Every bit of it. Everyone stood silent for a moment together in uncertainty yet bound by hope. They watched the ambulance door close, sealing the woman safely inside as if she was now part of a delicate promise they all shared. The sirens roared to life once more, leaving an emptiness behind in the air. Samantha could feel the cool breeze wrap around her, carrying away the warmth of their connection. Just then, the boy tugged at her sleeve gently. "Can we go with her?" Samantha's heart broke anew. "Let us find out what we can do next," she said softly. Together, they took a small step forward, not knowing which direction their journey would take or what awaited them. But Samantha felt deep in her heart that this was just the beginning of something profound. And as they moved forward, a new question echoed louder than the sirens: what would they discover in the shadows of uncertainty that lay ahead? Samantha moved alongside the boy as he tugged on her sleeve, his small hand trembling. Tom walked close behind, his wide eyes reflecting both concern and uncertainty. The chatter of the crowd faded into a distant hum, every heartbeat echoing in Samantha's ears, drowning out the sirens that still lingered. What if she doesn't make it? The boy's voice brought her back to the moment, cracking with vulnerability. His small frame seemed to sag under the weight of his worries. "Let us not think like that," she replied, kneeling again to meet his gaze. "There's hope. The paramedics wouldn't work so hard if they didn't believe it." He nodded, but the worry still danced in his eyes. Grace looked at the two of them, her eyebrows knitted together. "Samantha, maybe we should follow the ambulance. They'll have updates. It can't hurt to stay close." "Right," Samantha agreed, rising to her feet and carefully guiding the boy along. The three of them started walking down the street, but as they approached the corner, Samantha felt a wave of uncertainty hit her again. What if they arrived too late? What if the woman didn't wake up? The boy suddenly spoke up, surprising her. "Do you think she has kids? What if they're waiting for her?" His voice was full of innocence, but the question struck a chord deep within Samantha. Tears threatened to spill as she imagined a family waiting for news that might never come. "They might be," she replied softly, "and that makes it even more important for us to believe." Tom reached for the boy's other hand. "We need to be strong for her, right? She might feel our energy." The boy nodded, squeezing their hands tighter as they hurried through the streets. They finally reached the hospital, a sprawling building that loomed above them. It was all walls and glass, but for Samantha, it felt like a giant fortress holding both fear and hope within its walls. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. People sat in chairs, voices low and heavy, shadowed faces illuminated by the flickering television. A nurse moved along the corridor, and Samantha rushed to her side. "Excuse me, we just followed an ambulance. What can you tell us about the woman?" The nurse paused, looking at the trio with pity. "You'll have to wait for the doctor to share any information. But I can assure you they're doing everything they can." Samantha felt her heart drop again. They were left to wait, trapped in their anxious thoughts. She turned back to see the boy, his eyes darting to every door that opened, every voice that rose above the others. "What if she doesn't come back?" he asked, voice trembling once more. Samantha knelt beside him, meeting his gaze again, feeling her own uncertainties twisting in the pit of her stomach. "But what if she does?" she countered, searching for courage to convey. "What if the doctors work their magic, and she wakes up just in time?" Just then, Tom's phone buzzed. He pulled it from his pocket, frowning as he read a message. "It's my mom, she's heard about the accident. She wants to come. Should I tell her?" "Of course," Samantha urged him quietly. "Family should be together." As he sent the message, the boy turned back to her, small fingers tapping on his chin thoughtfully. "Can she really feel us? What if we think happy thoughts for her? Like a big hug?" A smile broke through Samantha's worry. "I think that's a beautiful idea. Let us all send her our hugs," she said, feeling the warmth of community swell around them. Together, They closed their eyes, picturing the woman surrounded by their collective love. But even as they embraced the moment, a different kind of tension wove itself into the air. Just then, a doctor emerged from the hallway, and the three of them leaned forward, bracing for the news that could change everything. "Are you family?" the doctor asked, eyes glimmering with a mix of seriousness and hope. Samantha swallowed hard. "No, but we're here for her." The doctor studied them for a moment, and the weight of the unspoken hung palpable in the air. "I may have news." A flicker of uncertainty crossed Samantha's mind. What was coming next? Was there hope, or was there something darker unfolding in the shadows of this unexpected journey? The doctor shifted uncomfortably, glancing between Samantha, the boy, and Tom. The moment stretched thin, every second a weight in the air. "There's been an improvement," he began, his voice steady but gentle. "The woman is stable now. We managed to revive her heartbeat, and she's responding to treatment." Relief crashed over them like a wave, and tears threatened again at the corners of Samantha's eyes. The boy's face lit up, a flicker of hope igniting where panic had resided only moments before. "She's okay," he whispered, almost as if saying it aloud would shatter the magic. "Yes, for now, she's fighting," the doctor said, but a shadow crossed his face. "It's still too early to predict her recovery, but she's in better hands than she was before." "What do we do next?" Tom asked, his voice barely above a whisper, the tension still clinging to the air around them. "I recommend you wait here in the waiting area. I'll inform you when she's stabilized enough for visitors," the doctor replied before walking away, leaving behind a flurry of emotions. Samantha felt an overwhelming urge to do something, to be proactive. "Do you think we could send a message or something? To tell her she's not alone?" The boy nodded eagerly, his small face now beaming. "Maybe they could hear us. Like a cheer team." With an idea sparking in her mind, Samantha took out her phone. "Let us record a message. We can send our hugs and hopes directly to her." Tom and the boy leaned in, their excitement palpable. Holding the phone steady, Samantha said, "Just say what you'd like her to know. I'll share it with them." The boy took a deep breath, his voice steadying. "Dear lady, we don't know you, but we believe in you. We're cheering for you," he said, his small hand making a fist like he was indeed cheering someone on at a game. Tom added, "Keep fighting. You have our good thoughts with you." Samantha, her heart swelling with warmth, finished, "You are not alone. We are rooting for you." Once the video was recorded, she hit send, feeling an exhilarating mix of hope and determination wash over her. For the first time since the moment they arrived, the weight seemed lighter. They stepped away from the chaos of the waiting room, moving to a quieter corner. The boy's face was still bright, as if a spark of his own light had ignited. "Do you think she can feel it?" he asked, his voice full of sincerity. "I believe she can," Samantha replied, heart racing with the certainty of community and connection. "Just like we felt each other's energy tonight. Love has a way of reaching through walls." Tom nodded, glancing around the hospital as if taking in each anxious face they'd seen upon arrival. "This place feels strange, doesn't it? So tense but also so hopeful. It's a mix of life and heartache, and that's what makes us strong," Samantha said, the truth of her words resonating. Just then, a nurse stepped out of the bustling corridor, looking directly at them. "You're the ones who sent the message, right? The video? The doctors have shared it with her," she said, pride illuminating her words. "It really made an impact." Samantha felt a surge of joy. "Does that mean she can hear it?" "She's not conscious yet, but they believe she can respond to familiar voices and feelings. It helps, and it might just make all the difference," the nurse explained with a warm smile. But just then, a loud alarm rang from the opposite end of the hall. Samantha's heart jolted in her chest as she turned, watching the chaos unfold. Medical staff swarmed in, a flurry of voices and urgent footsteps. "What's happening?" Tom asked, worry creeping into his tone. "Stay here," Samantha said, trying to create a barrier of calm between the boys and the unfolding scene. She gripped Tom's shoulder for assurance. But as she watched the frantic movement of doctors and nurses, the moments spent hoping for one life suddenly felt tighter, more fragile. Would they be able to squeeze through this night without more heartache? The doctor who had spoken to them before rushed back, panic evident in his eyes. "I need a few volunteers to help us with." He looked directly at Samantha, his expression shifting with determination. "Into the treatment room." And just like that, Samantha felt the urge to act, breaking through everything familiar. There was a fight ahead, and she could either stand by or step up. But was she ready for the weight of that decision? The waiting room buzzed with anxious energy, but in that chaos, Samantha's resolve solidified. She stood tall, taking a deep breath before stepping forward. "I'll help." The doctor's eyes widened in surprise, but there was a flicker of respect in his gaze. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice tinged with caution. "Yes," she replied firmly, her heart racing with adrenaline. "I can do this." Tom looked concerned, gripping her arm. "Samantha, are you sure about this?" His voice was low, filled with urgency, yet a depth of admiration shone through. "I can help," she insisted. In some way, the urgency of the moment made everything else fade, the lingering thoughts of her own turmoil, the uncertainties about the woman's condition. Here was her chance to make a difference. With the doctor leading the way, they rushed through the corridors, and Samantha's heart pounded with the rhythm of hope and fear. Tom and the boy followed closely, the weight of the unknown trailing behind them. Once inside the treatment room, the world outside felt like a distant memory. Bright lights overhead highlighted the frantic motion of the medical team. Samantha witnessed the seriousness of the situation as they worked to stabilize the woman, shouting commands, calling for this and that. "Okay, I need hands." A nurse yelled, and instinctively, Samantha stepped up. "What can I do?" "Get me the saline solution." The nurse directed, and for a moment, Samantha was stunned. The command propelled her into action. She grabbed the solution, her fingers trembling slightly as she handed it to the nurse, her heart racing with purpose. "Perfect. Now, her pulse is irregular. We need to stabilize that," the nurse instructed. Samantha observed closely, learning, absorbing every movement, every word. Meanwhile, she could hear Tom whispering encouragement behind her. The boy, watching with wide eyes, stood next to Tom, helpless yet hopeful. "Will she be okay?" he murmured, still clinging to that feeling of belief. As they continued to work, time became irrelevant. Each second blended into each other, charged with emotion. Each heartbeat resonated like a drum. Without thinking, Samantha found herself signing words of comfort to the woman, whose face was pale but serene. "You can do this," she silently communicated. "You're not alone. You don't have to fight this by yourself." In that moment, she felt like she wasn't just helping, she was a part of something deeper, intertwining lives in a shared moment of vulnerability and determination. As the medical staff responded to each situation with urgency, something shifted in Samantha. She realized that even in the gravest moments, human connection had the power to heal. Finally, with a collective sigh of relief, the team stabilized the woman. The doctor stepped back, wiping sweat from his brow. "We've done what we can for now," he said, his voice quieter, though exhaustion hung in the air. "Let us see how she responds." Samantha took a step back, heart racing. She felt a weight lift. "We really did something," she whispered, disbelief lacing her tone. Tom's hand found her shoulder, a gesture of solidarity. "You were incredible." The boy looked up at her, awe reflected in his eyes. "You helped save her." Tears brimmed in Samantha's eyes. In the thick of it all, she had found her own strength, and maybe, just maybe, she could rise above the weight of loss that had gripped her heart since the accident. Just as hope flickered like a candle in the dark, another doctor entered, a new sense of urgency dancing in the air with him. We need family. Has anyone contacted her relatives? Tom's expression turned serious. I can do it, he declared, determination glinting in his eyes. What's the name? As they began exchanging information and making calls, Samantha watched as the camaraderie among them deepened. Despite the somber circumstances, layers of emotion and connection threaded through the air. After moments that felt like hours, a nurse came in with news. Her family is on the way. And we're grateful for your help. It made a difference, she told them, glancing directly at Samantha, her eyes bright with gratitude. There, amidst the chaos, a sense of belonging settled in Samantha's heart. The atmosphere was charged with emotion, a sticky web of love woven tightly by the hopes and fears they shared. Samantha had embraced her vulnerability and transformed it into something powerful. And yet, the truth remained that healing was not linear, it would take time. But together, as a community, they could navigate this journey, armed with strength forged in the fire of love and connection. As quiet settled over the room, Samantha turned to Tom and the boy. Thank you for being here with me. This feels different now. Tom nodded, a shimmer of understanding passing between them. We'll face whatever's next. I know we can, the boy said with newfound confidence. Together, they walked out of the shadows, ready to embrace whatever this journey would bring next, united. The journey ahead was still unknown, but they were no longer alone. They were a family, mismatched yet bound by an invisible thread of love, each holding on to the belief that healing could emerge even from chaos, that hope could flourish among the fragments. As they stepped back into the world, a new possibility glimmered in the distance. They could reclaim their narratives, facing the future hand in hand, hearts open to the life waiting to be lived. This was the moment of transformation, a tapestry of connection woven through chaos, threading their lives together in enduring hope. Now, this is the moment to take action. You need to subscribe now to our channel so you won't miss the next exclusive stories that will warm your heart. Leave a like now to feed that algorithm and help us spread these tales. Comment below your reactions and feelings about this emotional ending. We want to hear from you. And don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformative journey. Your support means the world to us.